TikTok psychic defamation case at a federal court in Idaho has been ongoing for well over a year now. Recently, the court decided on the motion for summary judgment, and the court determined that the TikTok psychic is in fact liable for defamation. So dealing with a civil case, we are dealing with liability for an issue, not guilt versus not guilt. Like, are you liable for the thing? Are you responsible for the thing? Are you not? Did you do the thing? Did you not do the thing? And is the thing you did, in fact, in violation of the law? The court found that the TikTok psychic was liable on that motion for summary judgment. So the question of did you defame someone is done. The answer is yes. Now the case is moving forward to a potential trial on the question of damages, and the court allowed punitive damages to be added. Remember, those are the punishment ones. Like, what are you doing? You suck. Don't do this again. Those damages. They allow a jury to say, this behavior is unacceptable to us, and here's the amount of money to remind you that this behavior is unacceptable. So that is the procedural posture of the case at the moment. However, the TikTok psychic then went, yeah, no, we're not doing this. I want a new judge. I want this judge reassigned. And if this judge doesn't get reassigned off this case because they're clearly biased against me, and the TikTok psychic argued in that motion that the court is violating her right to religious freedom by saying that there is no evidence that the things that she stated about a University of Idaho professor killing 4 students off campus, the case that Brian Koberger is being prosecuted for, is against her religion because her tarot cards told her that that was the truth, and requiring her to have independent, verifiable evidence of the things that she said is somehow impeding her right to her religion. So she is asking that the court be removed, that a new judge be assigned, and in the alternative, that the court reassess their ruling on the motion for summary judgment. She actually said, I am giving the court an opportunity to rectify its ruling. So that is what's going on with the TikTok psychic. She filed those 3 motions, 2 motions to yeet the judge, 1 motion for reconsideration wherein she tried to relitigate the entirety of the thing. The professor responded because the professor has to respond because this litigation will not stop. And of course, the TikToker is representing themselves. So all of these motions are being filed by her. This case is far from over. The fight over religious freedom is something that is just not well placed in this case, because it's just not well placed in this case. But that fervent circular arguing in this case is got to be incredibly difficult for the lawyers to parse. It's hard for me to parse every time we read it. And it's been difficult for the judge to deal with. I've listened in on the hearings in this case, and the judge tries to redirect the TikToker to make the arguments in a linear way that need to be made. And it is just so incredibly circular, and all of the arguments keep circling back. And some of them are arguments that have to be addressed, including at one point, the TikToker arguing, well, if you say that my religious practices are not founded in evidence, then aren't you saying their opinion, and opinion can't be hearsay? So it's that kind of circular arguing that the court and counsel have been dealing with, probably at great expense to the university professor, who sent a cease and desist and said, can you please stop calling me a murderer? And then we're on the call for the last motion, and the TikTok psychic is saying to the court, well, you can't just take her word for it. She's a murderer. That was her argument to the court, y'all. So we are deep down the rabbit hole of this case. And when this case was first filed, many of you asked, and a lot of you probably still feel, isn't there anything the court can do to look at this case and say, no, we're not doing this, and throw it out? No, there are processes and procedures for this that are required. So you can't just look at this and look at the case and just hurl it, especially because the plaintiff is the one seeking a remedy here, who is the harmed party the university professor. So for all of you asking, what about vexatious litigation? It's not because the university professor is trying to rectify a wrong done to them. So it's not vexatious. It's trying to rectify the wrong. And you can't just look at it and be like, well, obviously this is defamation. What are we even doing here? Stop it and enjoin someone's speech. So there is process to all of this, which is tons of litigation. And so with that litigation, you have potentially a year plus of having to pay to represent your reputation, really, and then go through this case. And so for the professor, I feel so incredibly frustrated going through this case, which is why I won't stop going through this case. And in going through it, I'm sitting there going, she is going to spend 2 years plus going through this litigation to maybe get to trial. And if she gets to trial, then she will win potentially damages and potentially win a injunction to enjoin the TikTok psychic from saying the things that she has asserted against the professor. That is a remedy that can't be got until the end of all of this. We saw it in like the Cardi B case, where you can get at the end of it an injunction saying you cannot say these things. It is a difficult remedy to get. It is a hard remedy to get because enjoining someone's right to free speech is difficult. But when it's been found that they have defamed someone, you can narrowly tailor what can and can't be said in some type of permanent injunction. But even then, that's continued litigation. And even if you win an amount of monies, that's continued litigation. And then if the other party files for bankruptcy or whatever, that's continued litigation. So the plaintiff in this case, the professor, is on this for like a 5-year run of potential litigation to try to get somebody to stop lying about them. And that is part of what can be really frustrating looking at the civil system, is because what do you even do? And so when somebody chooses to sue like this, they have to sit down with their attorney and be like, okay, what is the end game here and how long are we doing this? It's just really, really, really tough. And so I feel for the professor in this, which is why I keep covering this case, because it's just really difficult. And in response to all of the plaintiffs' oppositions to the motions to reassign the judge and the motion to reconsider the summary judgment, the TikToker has again tried to relitigate every aspect of this, accusing the court of being biased against her spiritual beliefs and practices, accusing the court of gross misstatements and misapplication of the law, and continuing to relitigate the same issues ad nauseum, including the assertion that everything she said on TikTok is covered by qualified and absolute privilege because, quote, it was in an effort to solve these murders. However, the privilege that attaches to law enforcement, prosecutors, judges, and others does not attach to individuals saying shit on social media. The individuals saying shit on social media, if they are wrong, can be sued for defamation, and that is why we are here with the TikToker being sued for defamation in a case that's not going to go away quickly or quietly. Because I imagine that at some point we're going to see some intervening appeals filed if the lawyer for the pro per determines that they are going to try to do that. I'm not saying that that's appropriate at this time or can even be done, but I'm saying that I think that we will see a ramping up of this litigation, which will, again, be costly to the professor who just, it seems, wanted the TikToker to stop accusing her of being a murderer, which the TikToker has doubled down on in all of these filings and in the court hearings. But when this goes to hearing again, I will keep you posted because, look, as defamation suits go, they are often not very cut and dry. And we have covered a few that are difficult. And where is the line of opinion? And where are the boundaries of that? This is not that case. And we are going to cover it anyway, because I think it's an example of how extensive these litigations can get, even when at the beginning you look at this case on its face and go, Yeah. Um, yeah, you're right. That is defamation. But that isn't how it goes in court. So we are still here, even though this case was filed in December of 2022. Absolutely frustrating to watch. But look, we saw pro per defendants like Darrell Brooks in real time in court, and we are watching the kind of written process of that until this goes to trial. It is equally frustrating. For deep dives into the stories that I covered here, you can find them on my YouTube channel at The Emily D. Baker and The Emily Show podcast. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday. The podcast goes live on Wednesdays. And if you want to stay in the loop with everything I'm doing, receive the fastest notifications out there, and get more Law Nerd community, join me at lawnerdapp.com, our free app for iOS and Android.